Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Yeah, this is part of a 3-day journey that we're going on, which is connected to a European project that the Pocket Project is one of the partners of, where we are working on global social witnessing, especially related to the situation of refugee and forced migrants and migrants in Europe. And we're just seeing a screen joining here where also a few of the members of this project are joining in from the university in Wittenherdecke in Germany. So tonight, the first evening, we are going to be looking at African diaspora, the African diaspora in Europe. And even just as we hear that title, we already feel that a lot of energy flows with that, because even just to see Africa, of course, it's a continent, but most other groups of migrants in Europe are named by their country and not by their continent. We don't speak about the Asian diaspora in Europe or the Latin American diaspora in Europe, but we do speak about the African diaspora in Europe. So already it shows us something about the energy that we are specifically addressing today. And yeah, the subtitle is Embracing a Better Future. And we will hear from three wonderful young people, Sunita Mba, Elizabeth Nyemkuna, and Gilbert Jesse, about their experience of being African migrants in Europe. And just a few more words about the framing. Structures of systemic oppression, as well as environmental crises, have forcibly displaced Africans for over 400 years. And today, around 11 million people of African descent are living in Europe. And current African migrants are mostly young people, mostly well-educated young people from Africa who are coming to Europe looking for jobs. Almost half of them are women. Yeah, and in Europe, they face existential threats, fears, economic pressures, stress, isolation, systemic racism. So sometimes it can be very, very hard to be here. So we're hoping for this call to help us all to become more aware, to relate more deeply, and to bring more love and compassion to each other. So we will start the call today, as always, with a short introduction to the practice of global social witnessing, because we assume that not everybody on the call has a wealth of experience with global social witnessing. And we'll also start with a short attunement or meditation together, because in global social witnessing, we know that this body that we sit in is a very precious instrument, which helps us to relate and also helps us to cut off from each other at times when we need it. So whichever we are doing. And in the past decades, more and more news and information has been flowing around the world, but not often has that information actually helped us to relate more deeply to each other. So sometimes the news that we receive is quite overwhelming, and we tend to process it on a mental level to speak about facts, to speak about people as if they were numbers. So part of our intention with these calls is also to really come back to the very human reality that lies behind all of those numbers. And instead of just relating on a mental level, to relate deeply on an embodied level, on a heart level, on an emotional level, and then also to bring our cognition and our mental capacity to understand some of the backgrounds. But our aim with global social witnessing today is to really hear deeply from three human beings who are personally deeply touched by the experience of being migrants in Europe from African descent. And I notice every time I use those words, migrants in Europe, and I look at Elizabeth and Gilbert and Sunita, something just doesn't seem to fit. You know, you don't look like migrants to me. I don't know where that term comes from. It just doesn't feel right to even use that. But, you know, here we are. And so that is also what we are feeling into. And, you know, yes, we are here with the intention of shifting from being a mental bystander to being, we could say, an embodied friend. Someone who, from our bodies, from our hearts, can relate deeply to Elizabeth, to Gilbert, to Sunita, as human beings, friends that are close to our hearts. But we might also meet edges in ourselves. You know, we all know that we sit on a long history of slavery, of racism, and this history has not been healed. Not in Europe, not in Africa, and it's constantly continuing to play out in the relationships, very painfully so. And we will all feel that in our bodies. You know, our ancestors are present here as we come together in this call. So I ask us all to bring our compassion to ourselves, to bring our self-care. I thank each of us for our willingness to sit in the discomfort of being here with this topic. And I know that our intention is to move towards relating, towards healing. And yeah, sometimes we might meet absence, blind spots, self-protective mechanisms in ourselves. And when we meet those, that we stay with them, that we stay with what is. And relax into it, create space around it. And hopefully from there, a next movement will arise. We don't know. But our practice is to be with what is in us. So let's just take a few moments to come home and fine-tune our instrument. It's a bit as if we are coming into the concert hall with our violins, our cellos, and we just take a moment to tune our instruments. Yeah, and with that, I would like to introduce our three wonderful people who are here with us today to speak from the theme that we are offering space to. And huge thanks to you, all three, for becoming visible here, showing yourself, being willing to be with us. Yeah, and I want to Thank you all. I also know, I'll just say it already now, that Gilbert's internet is not great and he might need to turn off his video while he speaks so we can hear him. So drink him in while you can. Yeah, and Sunita Mba, many of you will know her. Probably everyone here will know Sunita. She is combining her role at the Pocket Project. She's our social media coordinator, but much more than that, Sunita is also really building the African hub in the Pocket Project and caretaking many of the global social witnessing calls. And she's combining this with the completion of her master's in World Heritage Studies, which is sponsored by UNESCO in Germany at the moment. Sunita is a passionate food grower, a permaculture designer, a facilitator, and she has prepared and built Bafut Eco-Village and many other projects in Cameroon for over 10 years before the civil war forced her to leave her beloved country. And Sunita still holds a key role in the Global Eco-Village Network of Africa. In 2017, Sunita received the Gender Just Climate Solutions Award by the Women and Gender Constituency of the UN Climate Change Conference for empowering women on the earthen cook stove technology. And driven by her passion for healing collective trauma, Sunita is also training and learning with Thomas Hübel. Yeah, and Gilbert Jussie is originally from the Gambia. So it just touches me because I visited both Sunita in Cameroon and Gilbert in the Gambia. So it's somehow touching to remember those times as I introduce you. Yeah, and Gilbert currently lives in Spain. He is a young man who has just learned so much and is passing it on as an inspirational public speaker, a community activist in sustainable community development, social justice, and also for permaculture principles. Gilbert co-founded a project called La Bolina in Spain, and this is an ecological, regenerative, and intercultural association close to Granada in Spain. And Elizabeth Nyamkuna, welcome Elizabeth, and thank you for being here, is originally also from Cameroon and is currently living in Portugal. She is an Erasmus Plus project coordinator for the African Way, a nonprofit in Portugal that is proudly speaking to African culture in Europe and inviting Europe to learn from Africa rather than the other way around. And our work in the past years has been around hosting summer camps and also working with migrants in the development of backyard gardens. So with that, I think we'll give the screen to Sunita, who will first offer us a bit of a systemic overview about the situation that we find ourselves in together here in Europe and around the world. You know, we believe that all of us experience everything. We're all part of everything that is happening in the world. So just sharing some of the systemic aspects of the situation of the African diaspora in Europe. And then we'll hear from Elizabeth, then Gilbert, and then Sunita about the personal experience that they are having in Europe. And I invite us all to, as we listen to this, to really track in ourselves, in our bodies, this embodiment. How is the information landing in us? How are we able to relate? How is our emotional relatedness? How is our mental relatedness? So just keep really tuning into your instrument and watching very carefully both the information that is coming from the outside, if we call it the outside, through Sunita towards you, but also the information that your system is giving you and connecting to both. And I might come in at some points to just invite a moment of quiet for us to reconnect more fully to our bodies. But other than that, over to you, Sunita.
Thank you very much, Kosha. Yeah, I think that a really great place to start is to look at, because you already mentioned, Kosha, about African diaspora. And so to go back to this African diaspora, because we always refer to as this, and not as a Cameroonian diaspora or a Ghanaian diaspora. So why this? And I would like to invite us, for those who can, to write in the chat, when you hear African diaspora, what is it that first comes to your mind? Just a few words. Just what comes to your mind when you have heard before or even now, or as well when you read the announcement for this call. And now that we talk about it, what is it that shows up in you? And we can all have a look at the chat. Movement from south to north, slavery. And Deb has talked about displacement and human trafficking, pain, losing your home, difficult journeys, biblical exodus, interesting. Strength, resilience, beautiful. Please keep them coming. And I think that together, also oppression, dancing and reading, yes. This is like the space we want to go into, to look at the waves between the pain, the joy, so the dances, the readings, the rituals, the pain around the displacement, slavery, as you have mentioned, oppression, difficult journeys. Yeah. And in my experience so far being here, I have seen the term African diaspora used, I would say, in three ways. So first of all, it really refers to the continent of Africa, because Africa is part of the world. But what this does to me and to my nervous system is I start to understand the flavors of what being in this continent means. But it also suggests like Blackness as an identity to me. And that means my color, so the color of my skin. But that also excludes, so it others Africans who are not having the same color. So it creates a bit, it also actually invites me to look at the culture I've come from. So my cultural identity, the food, the dance, the rhythms, but most importantly, the dressing, the colorful dresses that we wear. And that is all part of it. But not saying whether it is actually right or wrong, but when we say African diaspora, this is actually the cake and the icing that we serve ourselves. And sometimes it's both subjective, but also very, very objective. And it doesn't just look at me as a simple human being, Sunita, coming from Cameroon, looks about also the politics around culture and identity, and Blackness and race in the continent of Africa. And this African diaspora in itself, it comes from a place that lies really deep in colonialism. And the fact that colonialism itself at some point was also embedded in African countries. So the time when Africans were taking as slaves over to Europe and to several parts of the world. And the first groups that started arriving from Africa, this was in the 1600s. And that kind of built a relationship, you know? And as I say knowing that these are also my ancestors from many centuries ago, over 400 years ago, that these people started moving and streaming into Europe. And this was built anyways from then already on the foundation of trauma and ethnic marginalization, because it was around slavery and colonization. And today, many people, and many of us Africans, we're needing to heal the wounds of the journey that brought our grandparents and great-great-grandparents to Europe. But also what I've come to know is that that process was not just about moving from Africa to Europe, it was also about settling here in Europe. And today we're going to talk more about that, Elizabeth Gilbert and myself. But I would like to bring into our awareness first the aspect of integration, because it's almost impossible to talk about African diaspora in Europe without really looking at integration and the process of integrating into a new society. And most of the times what has happened is, today we want to look at, is there equal treatment on the grounds of race and ethnic, or having come from an ethnic group? Are African diasporas treated on the same grounds in terms of integration, like people who have come from Asia and people who have maybe also come from Eastern European countries, or people who have come from Latin America? So in the process of settling into Europe, what are the levels, again, the layers of discrimination, but also the opportunities that have presented themselves? There have been really low level of integration and inclusion of Africans. And as I say this, I just call it as it is. And I know that this is difficult, but most importantly is the scale. So there is a certain ladder when we come to integration. And usually it's like a pit that you dig. And you dig the pit until you get to the bottom of the pit, and Africans are at the bottom of the pit. So you have to remove all the migrants and refugees, and at the bottom of that pit, you meet Africans. So it's usually the last group of people that are taught about when it comes to integration. And so therefore, what that means is that there is a systemic structure that exists in terms of, so centering something different. So Africans are always external. So there is a certain structure that has to be created for integration. And then Africans can be taught about later on how they can fit into that structure and system. And usually by the time we think about Africans, how they fit into that integration structure, it's how many years ago, we don't know when that actually happens. And so we have to wait. But also, mostly it's difficult because, as Kosha said, we come with a lot of skills. And it's not that we all come with great skills, but at least we come with great culture. But mostly there's some skills there. And usually it's a stated fact that the first generations, they could get really great jobs. But then later on, the next generations, there is a lot of de-skilling. So there is a lot of menial jobs and working in the sectors where it's mostly entry point. And even if you have been working at a very high level in Africa and you get into Europe, you go back to the entry point of working in different layers. And without having to take so much space and to give now the opportunity to hear from our experiences, but to mention one last thing about the systemic approach is that actually when it comes to the point of crisis, when the world is hit by crisis, and this is when the systems we live in become even more vulnerable, and we have even a bigger stream of refugees coming into Europe, into different parts of the world, that usually in this moment, and we can call crises like war, COVID, natural disasters, accidents, different crises, that usually even in this moment, in this very moment, Africans are always still the last people. You know it. You will be the last person on the line to be looked at. Your name will be the last name to be heard. So again, just taking that in, and finally, there are stereotypes. And I know one of them very much, and it usually feels like, yeah, African diaspora. I have this really imprinted, because this is part of being in a very systemic society, that even as an African, I also carry those inside of me. That African diaspora, in my mind, is a young African man, very unkempt, who is rushing to Europe, fleeing on a boat across the Atlantic Ocean, searching for social security support in Europe. And maybe most of us have different kinds of stereotypes that we carry inside of us about African diaspora. And yeah, maybe I leave it at that. And yeah, maybe I pass it over to you, Kosha, or over to Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sunita. I would just like to, you already stopped, but somehow I feel the point that you just made, that Africans are named last, and when I just want to give some more space to that in our world community, how it is that when there is a natural disaster, when terrible things happen, how little we hear about it when it is Africa, and how a lack of even witnessing and caring and support in our global community, how that is affecting the sense, the situation. Yeah. And are we able to connect to that, to relate to that? Even just something like the civil war in Cameroon, who really hears about it? What do we actually know about it in the world? What have we heard about it? Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing that, Sunita. And I'll leave it to you to hand over to Elizabeth now, Sunita.
Elizabeth, please feel welcome to share to deepen this initial sharing with your personal experience.
Hey, can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you, Sunita. Yeah, thank you, Kosha, for also giving the space. I must say, really, that was a little bit heavy there and good to reflect on, but I'm happy to share. And just like Kosha already mentioned, like how many people are aware of the civil war, for example, in Cameroon. It's not something that is talked about. And indeed, many Africans move for many reasons. Some move for school, some move for greener pastures, but in my case, it was really that of the war that forced me out of there. So it became really serious that I had to move. And my first landing point was in Germany. So here I am in a place where I've never been before. I'm used to being baked or being burnt because Cameroon is around the equator, meaning that the heat's very warm. And I got in, I think it was autumn, but for me, it felt like it was maybe minus 20. So one of the first things that was really heavy on me, for example, was climate change. This was a complete transition. I'd never really been in the situation where I had to feel this kind of cold. But however, it has really been a period of consistent transition, and I'm still transitioning. It's not even over yet. And from my native home, like from my village, and the war got intensified, then I moved to the city of Cameroon, where it's very noisy and we are used to all of that because it's the economic capital for where I was living. And then to Europe. So just keep moving like in that sequence. And now in Portugal. And I'm not even sure I'm done yet. So the transition is really consistent and oftentimes unpredictable because you really cannot foretell what is ahead of you before you step into it. We move oftentimes by faith. I had to make my movements by faith, just trusting that, okay, the environment can't contain me anymore. It's time to move, and I had to move. Because if I stayed in the village, I was gonna be killed by now. Almost everyone is wiped out. So I got in here, and the climate was my first shock. Very cold, frozen teeth. And then late at night, it was so damn quiet. At least I was used to hearing the insects, hearing the birds or some animals in the bush. And I was in the midst of a very big city. And then it was super quiet and I was not used to, I really was not used to this. Like, it's so quiet. I felt like I'm missing like some creatures that I normally sleep with are not around me. And I had a fever for like 1 week because I just did not even understand. Even my body was not understanding. And sometimes we come here not completely like 100% prepared, but already I knew already that, okay, Europe is cold, but how cold? To what extent? Do I have everything? I don't have everything. So I came in that way with basic needs. So I still needed extra warm clothes. I do not have money to afford it. And good thing is where I lived at that time, I was able to get one. And then when I got to Portugal as well, in terms of housing accommodation was a problem for me. And then at some point, someone offered help, which means this is the process of the faith. Not like I knew anyone here, but there was that process of help. And I was helped myself because I wasn't alone. I was with other Cameroonians, 2 of us, which I call my sisters, because for us, especially when you're coming from Africa, everyone that you meet from irrespective of the country, is either your brother or your sister. It's not necessarily biological, or you need to know the person. So in this process, I had to also go through the code without heating, like 2 years, no heating, and it's freaking cold. But I remember one thing that helped me, and that helped my team, or that helped my group. That was the use of native medicine. That was what kept us together. So we had to use that knowledge that we learned from grandma to inculcate into our daily lives. During the cold period, we would make our different concoctions or mixtures for the cold, for the chest, for the bronchi, and everything. And we would take them. And then we had to learn to grow food because we were not working. And so we could not have the money to buy everything. We could only rely from friends or from people who knew that, oh, there are some Africans living in this part, in this village, and they bring something to us. And also we try to grow food, backyard gardening, vegetables. So when we eat from the vegetables, we drink the medicines, the herbs actually, that we made, and then it kept us healthy, and we drink tea. So in that way, we went through 2 years, no heating. I tell you, no heating, and none of us had either cough or cold. I was really surprised myself at that, and I was like, this is like a miracle, and one of the reasons I love herbs a lot. And then food was also an issue. First of all, the issue of the integrating with people was not very easy because, for example, when we came here in Portugal, we were blessed to be received by a very good partner and sister organization of us, which is Tamera. They received us to help us out. But you could find also many people who were not used to, like, oh, we're not used to having Africans in our midst just like that. Some people know, some people are not aware. So we also know that it's true that Africans are oftentimes marginalized or being racist towards. That mindset is there. But in my case, I do not really have to leave that to like rule me, like everybody's like that, because I experienced a lot of also good people in this process of integrating. But it was quite tough because sometimes you go to the store or you need assistance. I've had this experience. I need assistance where I'm going, and I'm really trying to stop someone to talk to just to show me the way, and the person deliberately doesn't want to talk to me. Or you sit somewhere and then the person beside you just wake up. So I don't give meaning to it, but I also like, but what does this really mean? How about also there is a lot of difference also in terms of taste. The food we eat and the food, these are two different um, aspects as well. Food grown in Africa, more tropical kind of food, and here there's not a big difference for now, especially in Portugal when I look at the spices, but there's still a lot of things that is different, and the methods of preparation. But at some point when you find yourself maybe in a community and you just have to eat what is available or what you have around you, it takes time to adapt to all of that, and integrating takes time. And like where I am now in Portugal, the Portuguese people, in my opinion, are quite shy people. But I still do not understand why sometimes, because in my culture, when you see an elderly person like carrying stuff or doing things, it's natural for you to rush to the person and try to offer help. Like, can I assist you? Can I take this to where that is really a bit cultural for us. So as I remember at some point, because even in this area where I live right now, no longer in Tamara, left some years ago. So in this area where I live right now, you really saw this elderly person coming up, and you have more of the senior people in the community here. And most of the young people, there are really not so many that much. I also do not understand so much why, but that's what I realized. Meanwhile, being in Africa, it's so much energy, you know. And one of the reasons why people can say Africans are loud, yeah, because you have a lot of energetic young people always having this vibe around them all the time. And then here you are, you find yourself in the midst of maybe mid or senior citizens, and they need quite or some calmness. Meanwhile, you want you want the energy inside of you is trying to come out, so you need to respect the environment as well that you find yourself. So when I approached this lady, and she was like, but I saw that she needed help, but she was not receptive. I have observed and tried that several times. I realized people out here, some, not everybody, really some, are not as receptive even to when Africans approach for certain types of help. And I think also at some point there is a mindset when it comes to when it comes to even offers, because I'm tempted to say this, there could be many immigrants, like from different nations, different countries, Africa, all of that. But I feel there is still a rank even in that line. There is still a rank. Like there's immigrants with higher rank and there are immigrants with lower rank. I ask myself, oftentimes, like when I move, I would attend Erasmus projects and spend time with younger people in exchanges and things like that. I always realize that either myself, I'm the most colored one amongst other people, and I'm like, what's going on? I know we have tons here, there are tons and tons and tons of Africans here, but what's going on? So because of a lot of these differences, it also makes Africans, many, to try to stay within their circle or try to be just themselves, especially when if they try to make an approach and there was a no, or they try to make an approach and there was a negative feedback, they start to now try to stay a little bit more within their circle, which is also, it's good as a community, but at some times I would personally would say it's good to go out of the comfort zone and just face life. Another part is also in terms of like documentation, the process. It's, for me, it was really crazy. I hear oftentimes, like when talking with the Asians and Indians and all of that who are here, they're like, oh, it took me 6 months to get my papers and stuff, but it took me 2 years to get a temporary residence. And I had everything complete. And now in those 2 years, no one will hire me because I do not have the working documents. Coming from Africa, I used to teach in universities, but here I can do nothing. I know how to make beats, to cook stuff, to do permaculture, to put my hand in the soil, and many other skills out of your normal life or lecture life or career life. Many other skills you would have. Oftentimes, many Africans are like that, filled with those type of potentials. But then there's oftentimes also the hindrance of you don't have the papers, you can't do anything. And then it's really has a psychological effect. Just really, it has a psychological effect. It could also be smiling, but going through a lot at the same time. It could be sharing, but going through a lot at the same time. And oftentimes, Africans are always at the point of wanting to share what they have. But there's also a problem with the reception of what they have. Either there's the problem of trust or African. So I remember, a friend from Africa was like, check this thing for me. I want to make a purchase from Europe. And I was like, I have no idea, but I'm going to find out. And I called someone, but this was a European, a white person, and I was talking about, okay, a friend wants to make a purchase for so and so, and this person can afford it. And the friend was like, where are you originally from? I said, I'm from Cameroon. So, oh, Cameroon. He numbered all of us, Cameroon, Nigeria, West Africa. All of you are all like scums or scammers. And he said this to my face. And then I was like, look, sir, I'm sorry of your perception about also how you think. Yes, we are not perfect, but not everybody is the same. If you can trust us and open up your heart and then see the genuineness in this, then it can be possible. And I was like, no, so for me, sometimes also socializing, it's a bit difficult because of this issue of trust, which is not there. The issue of fear, there is fear sometimes from both sides, a lot of fear, and it just makes it hard. It puts a lot of barriers, a lot of glass, a lot of ceilings. And then we always have to, like, we are in double war because there is war still going back home. People back home are calling you for what's going on, telling you this is happening. And at the same time, you are fighting to survive, to make a living, to get roof over your head, to try to have food on the table, or to try to make sure you find a job, even if it's a farm, to earn something, or to try to express your passion and share what you have inside of you. But it always take, it's not a day's job. I realize it's really a process. Even till now, I still have to push and really accept things. And some I just accept and understand the culture and try to, and really force myself to integrate as well.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. My team to join you, to take the time to process with you and to be here with you as you share about the double war we are facing. Yeah. And looking at the time, maybe you're not kosher, it feels like the right time to invite you back in. Is that okay with you, Elizabeth?
Yeah, and just Elizabeth, that there's a lot of acknowledgement in the chat also for your depth and authenticity of sharing, and just gratitude for being allowed to be here with you and listen. And I think we can all feel the tears behind your smile also. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's such a gratitude here in the space. I hope that we can be friends for you. Just speaking it out here. Friendships. Yeah, the longing for true friendships across the different spaces. Yeah, thank you. And let's hear from Gilbert. And we can see, Gilbert, whether you can, maybe we can just have you come here with us, and then we see whether your video can stay on or we need to turn it off. You just need to unmute, Gilbert. We can't hear you yet. Maybe Scott can help.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you. You're clear. It's amazing. Over to you. And
yeah, that's great.
Time is running, so maybe you can just look a little bit at the time, like 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you.
Perfect. No problem. Anyway, greetings to everyone, to you, Kosa, Sonita. Thanks for inviting me to this space. And thanks to everyone. I'm connecting with your messages, and it's inside my soul and heart. I feel, as those who don't know me, my name is Gilbert, and I come from the Gambia, West Africa. Yeah, I live now in Spain, 9 years now here in Spain, and I live now in Girona. Uh, my life changed the fateful day of the 15th of February, 2016. Yeah, it was the last day that I left my home, my community, my village, my people that I loved, my people that I stand for, the people that I cherished, to leave home and with my job. I have a very stable job, a very privileged position, leaving everything to head to mainland Spain. Yeah, which was really not an easy decision because that fateful day of the 15th of February was the day that my community, my village, protested against sand mining, protested against exploitation of this beautiful resource that we have, where our women grow their gardens, where they grow their vegetables. And 30 of my colleagues were arrested and sent to prison. And I was part of the organizers of this event, this demonstration, organizing night meetings, living work, trying to be strategize. How do we, organize this demonstration? And things went wrong. That was not as planned, but yeah, people we acted within heavy hand, and the government intervened with a heavy hand. For those who don't know, the Gambia is a very nice country, and but then we had a dictatorship for 22 years during this time. So yeah, so on this fateful day, as I said, so when my colleagues were arrested, taken to jail, taken to prison, I organized everything, but my name wasn't mentioned. So I, have to continue with my job, but sleepless night, going to work and thinking every day when they will come and pick me up, because the government was looking for information for the person that, put all these people into this situation. So it was not an easy decision for me to leave my job. I didn't have any problems in Africa when it come to work or whatever, but I had this situation of fear. And there was a lot of family pressure also from my mom, who live in the city, and that here you're staying, and we all know that you are part of these organizers. You are very stubborn. You are an activist. Why will you stay? So for me, it's like, no, I'm never leaving. I am, many people are looking up to me in this community. I'm a fighter, and I don't never want to leave. But after 3 weeks, I have to just make a decision. Leave just my job without even telling my boss. Without telling anyone, and just, I had a visa at the time. I just already have a Spanish visa, 15 days left. I used this opportunity and left Africa and left my community. But hardly ever did I know that it's a different experience with the Europe that I used to know. Because before that, as I said, I have a privilege of traveling a lot in Europe. Coming here, receiving, having a very warm welcome, been receiving a hotel, attending conferences, doing so many things. But choosing a decision to stay in Europe is a very different experience. And hardly did I know that this is a different experience. I was going into a world that was completely different from the one that I know. I was losing every single privileges, this fame that I used to have in Africa, this fighter in me, and so on, is going forever. Just within this spirit. When I landed in Spain, I didn't prepare it. So the first day, like, I have to just slip out in the cold after the airport. I entered I entered Barcelona, then I went to Valencia. I didn't know anyone in Valencia at the time, so 2 days I have to sleep outside, and find my way, because I'm a fighter, so I have to find my way how to survive in this difficult environment and terrain. So I make contacts, then came and met my fellow people from the Gambia. I was then hosted. Then I started to think, then what next? Do I do now? What do I do? I'm here. I don't even know what is asylum. I don't even know how to claim this international protection. So I asked for advice, and the information that I got was that, oh no, Sweden was better than Spain, so go to Sweden. This was the worst decision of my life, of even leaving Spain and going to Sweden as a new person in Europe. So I, like as a migrant, I went to Sweden. When I arrived in Sweden again, I didn't know anyone in Sweden. it was damn cold on this night that I arrived in Sweden. There was snow everywhere. I couldn't really understand. I was in Sweden. In Malmo, I didn't know anyone. I slept outside under the metro with this cold, living my country, living, whatever I used to love and all that I cherish. When I was in Sweden, I asked for where could I ask for, because I don't have anywhere to stay. Where could I ask for protection? So I was shown to the police. I went to the police and talked to them about myself and why I was in Sweden. The police told me, look, we can't do anything because we don't take asylum in Sweden. You can only go to the immigration. They just wrote a note and a letter, give it to me, and I have to find my way with very less money. I have to take a bus. I didn't have enough money. Then the first bus, they have to take me down. I joined the second bus, the same thing. Then the third bus, the driver was, feel sorry for me, and then just let me in. So just took me up to the asylum center, dropped me down. I went in. They said, yeah, we can't put your case until the following day, and it's late already. You have to find where to sleep. I said, okay, this is crazy. I'm already in Sweden. I don't know anyone in this country. I've slept outside for one night, super cold, and now I have arrived in the asylum center. I've been told that I don't fit in this night, it's late. I can only wait until tomorrow before I put my asylum claim. This was a very difficult moment. I begin to say, look, could I get into a plane and just go back to Africa and face whatever risks or consequences? But, I don't think I can stand another night here. Then I have to be again, sleep very close to the asylum camp outside. The following day, early in the morning, I wake up. I couldn't sleep until around 6 o'clock. I wake up, and then 7, 8, 9, 10, no breakfast. They were like taking people in. I went in, put in my case, and then I was taken. And then they were asking me two decisions. We could put you in a hotel, or do you know anyone in Sweden? I said, no, I don't know anyone in Sweden. This name of a hotel I was taken by this name because for me, I work in a hotel. So if anyone told me about a hotel, it's like a place of comfort, luxury, where you could sleep very well, comfortably with AC. This was not true. In Sweden, this is not true. I didn't know that I'm gonna be put in a camp, like all military camps, where it's a men camp, where you only live with men, people from different parts of the world who have seen war, everything, all the wars in life. I was put in this place. I was staying in this place for 1 month. Every 1 month, they have to change you. I was changed again in another camp. Even worse, it's like an auction, but in a normal auction, it's like the highest bidder takes the thing. But in this asylum system, the lowest bidder. So the camp that asks the less money, these camps are controlled by people from sometimes Ethiopia, sometimes, Eritrea. So they pit Africans against each other. It's like the old colonial system. So there is always Africans that they will give to manage these camps. And this is even the second camp was worse because it was in a remote place in the middle of nowhere, close to anyone in Sweden. When I went to the second camp, still my case wasn't taken. They said I have to stay for 3 months before they take my camp, or else I can choose a decision to go back to Spain or Dublin. I said I have to go back to Spain tomorrow. If I can get a flight ticket, I'll go back to Spain. I can't, with all the niceness of Sweden that I had and everything, I can't stay in this country one more night. I'm just leaving. So they have to make emergency papers for me. I have to fly back from Sweden back to again Spain, Madrid. In Spain, Madrid again, I arrive in Madrid. I don't know anyone again. Like I arrived in Madrid, landed back in the airport in Spain. Then, I have to enter the train again, struggle, enter the train with the little money that I have. Luckily, I met with one very nice lady who just asked me in Spanish, where are you going? Where are you from? I couldn't even speak one word in Spanish. So for me, it's like we were just trying to talk in sign languages, and she really understood me, felt compassion for me, and took me in. She said, yeah, you can come and stay in my house until you find your way. And this is how I went to stay in his house. Then, start to figure out my way out. Then after 1 week, I started to ask where I could put in my asylum in Sweden and, in the asylum system. Understanding that, I am trying to buy time in Spain, but Spain reject almost 85% of every asylum seekers. It's only in every 100%, it's only 15% that get asylum in Spain, no matter what your case is. That's the facts. So I decided to ask for asylum, knowing that everyone does this. The asylum could give me the possibility of living 3 years in Spain and be able to figure my way during that time. But I know that I will not be accepted. And yeah, this was a difficult moment for me. Again, in Spain, even though Sweden was difficult, Spain was much better. But again, the system in Spain wasn't prepared for your intellectual capabilities, because the system is designed for, not for the migrants who come to live in here. The system is designed for people that live here. So even though when I arrive in the asylum system in Spain, I live in this system. I try to find a way of pursuing my like masters in law, because I have a degree in law, and they were telling me that I needed to translate my papers, and then I needed at 3,000 euros if I need to change these papers, and this was impossible for me. Like someone who cannot work in this country, that looks like life impossible for me. So I have to resort to odd jobs. I have to take the reality of things that I will not even do in Africa. And then now qualification doesn't matter. I have to completely learn a new language that's far different from whatever I knew. I have to go back to like nursery school, learn the alphabets. Yeah, it was a difficult journey. It was a difficult journey here in my life, So until I started to find my path, going to conferences that migrants will be present. I will go to conferences where you have 400 people. I'm the only African there, and people talking about migration. And for me, it's like I couldn't get it. I say, hey, what are you talking about? You're talking about a topic. I'm from Africa. You are talking about us. You are designing us how to live. You are trying to design our future. For me, it's like it was really, really an experience that I learned along the journey. But they were also good parts. They were nice people. I also meet nice friends. I make amazing friends. People that were always happy to help me anytime. And through the Global Eco Village Network, I also begin to meet my old friends and contacts. I find myself in my passion and in my way over here. Yeah, but finally, like the road is always difficult, but finally, yeah, my mom passed away in Africa. I couldn't go. Very difficult. Again, when I was here, but yeah, finally I paved my way. I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter always all my life. I have to fight, getting my papers, fight again, like develop on those papers. Yeah, get that job, that dream job that I was always looking for. But before that, as I said, I have to join associations. I have to find other projects here. But even with founding those projects, I begin to see the same things that I was fighting within, and those same kind of injustices and those kind of privileges, and like this kind of white privileges or whatever, beginning to focus again the same things that we say we are fighting out in the world. The same issues begins to appear in this new projects and association that I find, and I could see that I didn't fit in. I either stay quiet and stay silent and continue, or else I find my way out, and I choose the latter. I have to leave again. So this is my story. It's a very difficult. Yeah, I could write a whole book about my experience in Europe without never ending. But this is what I have to share with you guys from the deep, from the deep of my heart, from the bottom of my heart. Yeah.
We are here with you. You can also see there's a stream of love for you in the chat. It has not been an easy journey, and we are here with you. And if you could allow yourself, and maybe you can go to gallery view and try and look around and see the faces here and see who is here looking at you, supporting you, feeling you. And in our African traditions, we say that when a child is growing up, it's like the elders, and all the elders in the village, they have their hands on your back. We all have our hands on your back, supporting you. Thank you. Would you like to join us, Kosha?
Yeah, I just also want to thank you for speaking as a young man, because I think hearing you and hearing Elizabeth, we also get a sense of the differences. And even, hearing about this men's camp far away from where people live in Sweden, it shocks me. Yeah. And I feel how good it is that we listen to you and that we hear your experience. Yeah. And that we create more spaces like this where we can hear you. And I can feel that when you can feel more seen and heard, as if something can soften, and maybe new possibilities can grow from these spaces where we soften. Yeah, but I can hear how much you need to fight. Elizabeth was speaking about 2 wars, and you keep speaking about that you're a fighter, and therefore you manage and you survive. And the sadness of hearing how you're leaving projects because the white privilege comes in again, and there's not really a solution, really speaks to me of the importance of us doing deeper work together. Yeah, I feel passionate about that with you. So thank you so much for allowing us to be with you and to listen and feel. Thank you, Gilbert. Yeah, and with that, I think we'll pass it over to Sunita. Sunita, you really only have like 5 minutes at the most. We also wanted to maybe open this space, but I think it was far more important today to just hear from you. But just offering the space to you for anything you would like to add. And I know there's so much to share.
Yeah, there's so much to share, and still I have like an intuition to give the space for others to share. But maybe I take the opportunity and share one thing and then allow 1 or 2 voices. Yeah, I could also write a book. But I think one of the main experiences that I have had, I also had to flee from the war in Cameroon and all the beautiful project and investment, years of investment I had made, and now destroyed by the war, burnt down everything completely. But I think that is traumatic. But the biggest journey that I had is the journey of living with the stories of hurt that have happened to other Africans. So I feel still in my nervous system, I'm very frightened by the stories of what has happened to other people and other Africans and other refugees in different places. And maybe sometimes I hear those stories from different people. They happened maybe a long time ago. For example, there is a story about an African who was standing at a train station and someone pushed him, and he was run over by the train. And somehow this is really stuck in me. And I noticed that every time I travel through Europe, no matter where, I just can't go close to the train tracks. I'm always watching my back and not knowing if someone is just gonna push me off. It's very existential. way of feeling in thinking. And of course, and I'm only sharing this as only one experience, but I think this is one of the biggest things that really shape how I work and navigate through the structures here. I currently study, so I have a lot of opportunities. I was one of the young people, young Africans that managed to find a way into the university, and I think I'm gaining knowledge. And I think with this opens doors to many more opportunities. However, just the thought of living with all these stories and all these fears inside of me, I think sometimes they're only like masks and ghosts of what happened in the past, but it makes so much difference in the lives of those that live today. So it feels again like an inheritance of the trauma of what happened before. And that is chasing me somehow, this space. And I would like to leave it at this. And if it's okay to open the space, Kosha. No, Kosha, are you here?
I am here, Sunita. Thank you. Yeah, and I'm not sure. I think we're really here to witness the three of you today. And I don't know whether people who are here online, whether you could just share maybe a word about how you are right now. All of us that have been listening, there's a word or a short sentence you would like to write into the chat, just so we can feel the resonance of the social body more. Yeah, it's interesting how this feeling deeply touched, feeling deeply touched, feeling deeply touched, just keeps coming back. And yeah, also, Salal, what you're saying, my tears are now flowing. I notice that I think maybe for many of us, our tears are close. I feel like as I read that, my tears could start flowing. And yeah, emotionally tender compassion, sad for the way our world is. And there's also a lot about wanting to hear more, right? We've heard, but it's not enough. We want to hear more. And I think you all three said that you could write books, right? And it's like here it's clear that people want to hear, you know, there's a wish to hear. Yeah. Yeah, and also a lot of appreciation for your resilience, your strength, you know, the heartfulness and the vitality with which you spoke. I loved, Elizabeth, when you said, where does the power of my youth express itself in these villages of ancient people, ancient shy people in Europe? Where are the young people? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so thank you all. And Ariane, also beautiful to hear that you work with refugees in a healing space. Yeah. So I really believe that this is just a beginning. And we want to continue building these spaces on bigger levels in Europe where we can actually come to celebrate and listen and learn to love the beauty of what others bring. And where we don't stay stuck in spaces of mutual not knowing. Yeah, and deeply know that true belonging, true safety lies in relating to each other. Yeah, and I want to thank you Elizabeth, Gilbert, Sunita, for your depth of being here with us today, for the generosity, the beauty, the dignity of your sharing. And I notice this hunger and the whole space of hearing more is also very alive in me. So yeah, I think it's wonderful just to spotlight the three of you and just taking a moment to sending you, as you said, Sunita, the blessing of our village here, our community, to have your back. And yeah, tonight we saw a little bit of who you are, and we love and we honor your beauty. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you all. And with that, we'll let you go. And tomorrow, we're going to be hearing from refugees from Syria. And then the day after, we will be hearing from refugees from Ukraine. So tell your friends, your neighbors, bring your hearts and join us for the call tomorrow and on Saturday. I know it is a lot to have 3 calls like this in a row, but I also feel that it might just break open something special for us. Yeah, so please join us for these calls. And also, we just want to mention to you already that the Collective Trauma Summit, which the Pocket Project is partnered to, a part of, will be starting on September 26th. And it will be running until October the 4th and will be a rich gift of generosity with poetry and activists and scientists and speakers from around the world, really speaking and opening and sharing knowledge around the topic of collective trauma and how can we initiate a global healing movement. So thank you for being part of us. So with that, we're letting you go. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Sunita. Thank you, Gilbert. And we'll see you again soon. Much love. Bye, everyone.